It is sad. It's a shame. But the day after Dolly Parton passed away, corrupt politicians were already busying themselves, making sure to put words in her mouth that Dolly never would have said. And in fact, she told us that was not the way she lived her public life. Today, we'll tell you what's going down, what's going on, and why the corrupt politicos have lost their minds. Be kind, and take your time, folks, to make the world a better place. That is the message I'm taking away from the life of Dolly Parton, but that's not the message being spread by so many who waited just until she was dead to get to say what they think she should have said all along. It's sad, it's unfortunate, but folks, we're going to expose it right now. Click the like button, and we'll tell you who the most egregious sinners in this area just might be. You know, it's a very sad thing indeed that Dolly Parton has passed away at the age of 80, and it seems to be an unexpected thing. They talk about her having passed after a brief battle with cancer. We're going to miss Dolly for sure, and it seems like society is as well. Unfortunately, corrupt politicians and ideologues are taking the very first day that Dolly is not with us to make Dolly say things that she never wanted to say, and that is disgusting. However, we'll start on the positive side here. Variety says that Dolly Parton's music streams have increased over 1,260% globally and 2,300% in the U.S. on Spotify. Additionally, 7 songs entered Spotify's Daily Top Songs USA chart with Jolene, and 9 to 5 debuting at numbers 2 and 3. We've also got this from Visit Sevierville, her hometown in East Tennessee. You can see all of the wonderful flowers and balloons and all of that they put out there around her statue that she has at the town square. That is very, very nice and indicative of a life well lived. I will say that I was at Dollywood on the very first day, of course, that they were open after Dolly's passing, and it was wonderful how they handled this. It was still sort of a jovial atmosphere of celebrating a life well lived. Dolly Parton, the background music had all been changed, and she was singing about going to heaven, which is really something that you go to a park and the person who's passed away is helping the folks at the park grieve and be joyful in a otherwise somber moment. But not all is wonderful out there. J.K. Rowling had tried just to be nice and talk about how amazing Dolly Parton was, and instead, she got this from Diner. It says, "You know, you and Dolly have nothing to agree upon, you blanking monster." Well, that's not very nice.
Or true.
J.K. Rowling then responds without going after the guy. Is actually tries to make a joke out of it and says, "Well, joke's on you because neither of us want Jolene to take our man," which is again clever. So J.K. Rowling doing her best to be kind about this. This is making the news out there. We've got Britain's news channel. J.K. Rowling furiously hits back as internet troll criticizes Dolly Parton legacy over supposed Trump support. And that's where this is all breaking down. Let me show you some more here. Doctor, they call him, Abdul El Sayed. Politician running, I believe, in Michigan. Is that right, Culture? Michigan for El Sayed. Linked with some folks out there who are unsavory, but is running for Congress.
Yeah.
Dr. Abdul El Sayed, who has been accused in the past of being communist, says Dolly Parton used her gift for music to highlight the challenges of poverty, inequality, and struggle in ways that uplifted and inspired working people. Well, that's sort of the language of Stalin, I would say. That's not how Dolly would put it, right?
Yeah, that's very democratic socialist of him.
Mayor Mamdani says this is truly heartbreaking. Dolly Parton was an extraordinary person and an irreplaceable champion of the working class. We are a better country. Dolly Parton, listen, was enormously wealthy and earned her way there and wanted other people to earn their way into wealth and never turned this into like a socioeconomic thing. She wanted people of every wealth level to love her music and to love her and be kind to one another. And not every politician is doing this. I have to say, sometimes we're critical of President Trump. We've done that in the past. when one of the Reiners decided to delete his father many months ago,
Terrible.
President Trump came out with a statement, and we said, you know what? It's not the right thing to say. It's not the right moment to say it. So we're sometimes critical, but President Trump, the way that he handled Dolly Parton's passing, didn't say a single thing political, just said, we're lowering the flags to half-staff, and she's an amazing woman.
Yeah.
The Clintons, whatever you think about the Clintons, came out, didn't say a single political thing about Dolly Parton, just were kind about her. Same thing for President Obama, but there's a new class of people out there who they're making this be all about them. And I want to show you how Dolly handled this. We're going to go to ABC. They may ding us for this. Disney always, they own ABC and they don't like us very much, but we're going to play it anyway. I want you to see what Dolly said and how she handled it when people tried to force her into political partisan situations.
I just don't get into that, and so if you are deciding you may want to ask me something more serious, don't, because I'm not going to answer it.
You have a president of the United States who said those things on that bus.
I'm not addressing that. I do not get into that. Of course, I have my opinion about everybody and everything, but I learned a long time ago, keep your damn mouth shut if you want to stay in show business. I'm not in politics. I'm an entertainer.
And yet, you're also a role model.
Yes, I am. That's why I don't talk about people. I just don't get.
There you go.
How refreshing. Like, how refreshing. Everyone needs to take notes like Mark Ruffalo and all of his lot.
Well,
So Congressman, let me go to you on this. So you've got these DSA folks who are essentially communists. They may say they're socialists. They may argue otherwise. It's not really. But Congressman, the very first day that Dolly can't say anything anymore because she's gone on from this world, they begin telling you what Dolly was all about.
yeah.
Dolly wasn't about this.
It's really despicable because it's like, yes, like Dolly did care for the working class. I mean, think about Imagination Library and just the amount of philanthropy work that she's done. Like, she's like the classical aristocrat, right? Where a good noble aristocrat in the past would use their wealth to build libraries, build schools, and leave behind that kind of legacy to help those in need. And you think about today's billionaires and technocrats and plutocrats, what do they do with all their money? Well, they just buy out Martha's Vineyard, or they buy a nice property for themselves. They don't actually help the working people. So yes, that's true. She does help the average everyday American. But then these democratic socialist types, these communists, they say, look, Dolly helped people. Therefore, she agreed with us in that we believe in the public's, in the government seizing all the means of production, or else you hate Dolly. Like, that's the Mott and Bailey that they always do. And on top of that, like, people like Abdul El Sayed, I mean, these are people who are enemies to America, but also this is a guy who killed 4,500 dogs and cats and euthanized them. And it's like, for me, one of the biggest litmus tests I have for anyone's character is, how do you treat dogs? Because I feel like the way that you treat man's best friend it's very indicative of how you view people and what your character is like. In the same way Hassan Piker shocks his dog to force Kaya into the corner for a stream every stream. Yeah, Abdul Al Sayed ruthlessly just murdered over 4,000 dogs. And these people are completely and wholly incompatible with our way of life in Western civilization. So all that being said, it's not a surprise that these people are using the death, the tragic death and the passing of an American icon, an absolute American legend who stands for everything that's so good about America: charity, generosity, patriotism, love, Christianity. I mean, her Christian love. She represents everything good about America. She came from Appalachia, right? She helps the Appalachian people. It's like they take that and they're saying, hey, look, she would have agreed with us as communists. Therefore, if you are sympathetic to Dolly Parton and if you were a fan, then you should come along with the ride with us to subvert America. And I find that to be really despicable. Like, all you could have said is, yes, rest in peace, she was an amazing person. And that's why, like, you guys mentioned this, that even Obama and the Clintons didn't do this, but there's a new class of very, very militant communists that are taking over the Democratic Party, which is very concerning. Very, very concerning.
Her philanthropy, to add to what you're saying, was very much, taking care of your fellow American, taking care of your fellow countrymen. And when tragedy struck, her philanthropy was 1,000% behind those who were suffering that tragedy. You mentioned specifically, in her region, she had the most amount of effect, because after what was it, Hurricane Helena or whatever it was, I mean, she directed her efforts directly at that tragedy, specifically at Tennessee. You know, she wasn't focused on, some communist bunch of garbage. She was focused on a community and people that were the most affected. And usually that is the people that have the greatest need, beyond the everyday. And so you're 100% right. And for those people to put words in her mouth or to interpret what she's doing, it is despicable. And I wish we had something stronger we could say.
And they add, sorry. But I
just this point, Congressman, they waited. It was the first day that she could no longer say what she really believes, because she's gone. They couldn't wait 2 days. They couldn't wait first day.
And it's on top of that, the Zoran Mamdani, the Abdul El Sayed types are the same people who constantly berate the Americans in Appalachia, that they're racist, they're transphobic, they're homophobic, like they're just scum, like white trash. That's what they literally call them. And then for them to say, "Oh, Dolly Parton, we love Dolly Parton," it's like, give me a break. Like, no, you don't. You're just using an American icon to subvert everything that is so great about American culture. And it really pains me to see just the amount, and I mentioned this earlier on the stream, just how many people used her death to say, Trump next. Why not Trump? Oh God, why couldn't it have been Trump? And then they're saying this not only about Trump, but about conservatives, because the horror.
Well, that's the dreams of the demonic, right? I mean, that's the meanderings of the macabre, because they wish for death. They don't wish for philosophical victory. They don't believe in trying to outwit their opponent. They don't believe in trying to win over the hearts and minds. They want the hearts and minds to cease and go cold and be buried 6 feet under. That's what they wish for. They are despots in waiting. They are narcissists of the night who are waiting for a dawn, and they can be the usherers in of a new utopia that they'll always win in their mind, but in reality, they might be the first to go.
Yeah, and that's really well said, and that's why it makes it really concerning, because these people are the biggest fans of people like Zoran Mamdani, which is very, very concerning. This is not just about economic policy, which is important. It's about the very heart and soul of this nation and where we're headed as a people. And we're headed towards a very, very dark direction, which really concerns me. It really does concern me.
Absolutely. Lauren, let's bring it full circle. We talked about the J.K. Rowling aspect of this. Let's bring it back to that for a minute, because the way this works is, this is the original tweet that J.K. Rowling had put out. She said, Dolly Parton's Imagination Library was the best contribution to child literacy ever made by a celebrity. Our paths crossed once in the 90s, backstage at a talk show, and I was completely tongue-tied and starstruck. R.I.P. Dolly, you were a complete, irreplaceable one-off. And the tweets that we posted before and showed you where the people are saying, blank you and all this kind of stuff, Lauren, what that speaks to is the idea that you're not allowed to be kind if you're on the other side from these, frankly, ghouls, right? You're not allowed to speak well-wishing words because they wish that you were removed from Earth. And therefore, they will strike you. They will show the venom that they have. They will strike you as hard as they can verbally, and maybe beyond, if given just one moment, if you dare show even empathy for another human being.
Yeah, but in the spirit of Dolly, this is one day when I don't want to bash anybody. Okay. And I think the remarkable thing about Dolly is that, and I agree with J.K. Rowling, actually, I think that her imagination library is the thing that I am most impressed by her, Sierra, as her greatest legacy. The thing that's fascinating about Dolly is that you don't know her politics. She didn't talk about it. She was kind and gracious to absolutely everybody. She lived out what her own philosophy was, and her answer on that interview was probably the best answer that you could possibly give. She was a smart cookie. She was intelligent, she was wise, and she was kind. Nobody that I know of has found any fault in anything that she did. In many ways, she was a contradiction in some ways. She acted in ways that maybe you might not expect in some aspects, but it was always with kindness. And that's something to be truly admired. That's something that both sides of the political aisle need to remember. We don't have to be enemies. And even if we are on different ideological sides, that doesn't prevent us from being kind to one another. And I think that's why she has the respect and the admiration of everybody who knew her, not just here in the USA, by the way, across the world. This woman is known for all of the various good things that she did. And that's a rare thing and should be celebrated.
And I think the most important thing was something that I think Pro said earlier in the day in a previous show. This is one of the people who was universally loved, and it didn't matter on what political side of the aisle you found yourself. And I think that there are very few of those people in the world right now, and I think that's important.
Yeah, and one of the fascinating things, and maybe this is where we go for the conversation. One of the fascinating things is that she is perhaps the last major celebrity that I know of in American society who stayed completely out of politics and is universally beloved for it. So there have been people talking about, the Mount Rushmore of celebrities that are just totally beloved. And so Mr. Rogers, right? Steve Irwin, Dolly Parton, and then you can debate the fourth. Some people have said Bob Ross. I might say Culture Casino, but the thing here is, I watched somebody try to pin Dolly Parton down on politics earlier.
No.
In a video. And she had one of the best responses because they want to know, are you a Democrat or Republican? What are your politics? And this was from years and years ago before things got so heated. And her response was charming and it was folksy and, I'm sure it was prepared. But she said, my daddy was a Republican, my mama was a Democrat, and I'm just a hypocrite. And I thought, that is so, it's so self-deprecating and yet at the same time, such a wonderfully fun way to respond to that. Wow. Congressman, or go ahead, Lauren.
There's one more thing that actually triggered in me when you were saying that, is that, let's say for the sake of argument, everybody knows that I make no bones about being a conservative. Let's say she was a hardcore liberal. I wouldn't care. Because she didn't try to beat me over the head with it. She stayed out of it. She was kind and loving. It wouldn't matter to me. And I wish that more people acted in that way. This doesn't have to be a performative sport. We can all have our private opinions and hold our own beliefs and vote our conscience without broadcasting it everywhere. And that's what she did, and it was a really smart and kind thing to do.
It's a fascinating world we live in, Cogman, where, on this channel, we advocate for entertainment to kind of get out of politics in the same way that she is. And we do that because, I was convinced years ago listening to Mark Kern, who goes by the name Grums online, but he's the project lead for World of Warcraft, and he made so many video games that we love. And he has this argument that you need zones of neutrality in society. So like sports would be one of those, entertainment is one of those, but the idea that we can set the politics aside for a moment and like you're a Packers fan or you're a Bulls fan or maybe you're a Dolly fan. But the idea is, the comparison he uses is the watering hole in the savannah. And he says, that there are these animals that they're predator, they're prey, et cetera, but at the watering hole, the water is so important that they recognize, I think I said Savannah Serengeti, the water is such a necessity that they set aside that hierarchy so that they can drink water, except for the freaking crocodiles, because they're just jerks in the animal kingdom. But other than that, and I'm convinced by that, Congman. And so I think Dolly was actually doing something that is so vitally necessary, and that is she sacrificed her own public opinion for the greater good, which is we need a cohesive glue. And now that is seen by the rise of the commies, the wokesters, that is seen as offensive to them. And they think that's a far right position to say, stop it. We can go to the movies together.
Yeah, and I think that's kind of like what we see with the political and cultural dynamic right now, where people on the right, there's so many people on the right who are liberal. And when we say liberal now, it just means those who are super far left, who are the types who use Dolly Parton's tragedy to advance their agenda. And that's why it's like, when you think about even these spaces of neutrality, I agree, because we can't be constantly 24/7 harping on politics all day. Like, I don't. In my day-to-day life, I'm not always talking about politics. I'm talking about sports. I enjoy sports. I play games. I watch anime. I watch Korean dramas. I watch movies. I geek out on things. I geek out on tech. I mean, there's all these things that aren't necessarily political in nature, but for us to even have those kind of spaces, there has to be an enforcement arm that allows for the protection of those spaces. And I think the great lie of the modern era is that if we allow for broad tolerance of every single ideology, every single viewpoint, and we have this broad pluralistic society where there are no guardrails or no standards or no limits, then we can still have that. But the reality is we can't, because we can't unify over things that are different. We unify over shared interests, shared values, shared heritage, shared culture. And then so there are limits even to our differences. And every society has differences. And in those differences, we can sharpen each other, we can get better, we can get smarter. But ultimately, there are limits to those differences. And if those differences are so far apart, where you have a faction of the country that does want to burn everything to the ground and wants to kill you for your opinions, it's kind of hard to have those spaces of neutrality. So I agree, too, because I very much enjoy talking to people who disagree with me, because it sharpens what I think, and it also challenges what I have to say and all my preconceived notions. But there is a limit to how much we can differ and live together.
And you're 100% right, because the centralized area that we've had as a society for a long period of time, hundreds of years, has been sport, which is why the Olympics came to be, right? We could come together, multiple different cultures that definitely didn't align with each other. And yet the sporting teams would go to somewhat of a neutral territory and have a neutral experience. The problem is that nobody defends the neutral space anymore.
Yeah.
And there's no better example of that than the PMS WNBA. And the problem is they don't know what the W stands for anymore. And that's a problem.
Which is a very basic thing to understand, but and we understood it 5 minutes ago. We're just pretending we don't for a little bit. Carmen, I want to come back though and ask about that, because it seems to me that here on this show and in my daily life, I recognize that we need classical conservatives. I think we need classical liberals, because I actually think it's tied into your personality traits to some degree, like your psychological traits. And so I kind of envision it this way. I envision that conservatives are likely associated with the people who have a strong affinity for protecting the traditions that they know work. And so I think that's important. And I think classical liberals, I think that they have a strong desire to fix that which is broken, which is probably highly associated with the trait of empathy, right, or conscientiousness. And then the centrists, to me, they kind of exist as these people who they wait for the election to happen, and as it's about to happen, they check and see, well, what's this going to do to my wallet? Okay. The problem is, Kongman, that's traditionally in America, that's the way society has been constituted. Mm-hmm. Now, there's another part of this that has been brought in, imported from the rest of the world, and that is the communist woke ideology, which is postmodern neo-Marxism. Marvin would ding the bell on me if I said it right now, and if he was here, but I don't view that as classical liberalism. I don't view it as liberalism. I view this as authoritarianism. I view this as a desire to warp the fabric of reality for narrative power and control, right? My truth is an affront to the idea that there is the truth. And so that's what I think is happening right now, is whereas we could all get along to some degree and set it aside, when you say that has limits, right? To me, that's the limit.
Yeah.
Because once you say, like, these people have put fundamentalist Christians and atheists together because at least those groups agree that there is a truth, like objective reality. And like, these postmodern neo-Marxists don't believe in that.
I literally did not even think I would ever get to a place where I agree with Richard Dawkins, because he devoted his entire life to disproving Christianity. And as a Christian, I was like, okay, there's nothing I would share in common with him. Now I find myself agreeing with him on a lot of issues because he sees what's going on in the West and he's like, wait, I don't like this. This is really crazy. And for me, I actually do have a broad tolerance for people and ideas and beliefs. But my line will always be children. Like the protection.
Oh, sure. Yeah, absolutely.
Of children. Like that is always my line. So when you have a death cult that is gung-ho about killing and defending the murder of children in and out of the womb, that's where I'm like, okay, you lost me. There's literally nothing that we share in common, because how can I share anything in common with someone who wants me dead for my beliefs and also doesn't care if they kill their own children? Well, that's so crazy to me.
That is one of the casualties of my truth, is that once you have my truth, you can deny the dignity of others. You can deny the human, the importance of the human soul. You can deny that there is a soul whatsoever.
And it gave us this rise of political violence that we had not experienced in this country in a long time. Outside of the 1970s radical movement that, gave us Hanoi Jane and all of her crazy ideas, and of course the beginning of this, the destruction of media and journalism because of Walter Cronkite and the stuff he subverted behind the scenes that we didn't learn until decades later. I'll just say that we've seen the very slow march of destruction as was foretold by others, and we should have been paying attention. We, as a nation and as a culture, we should be recognizing the shortcomings, that we've had recently and start to remedy them. And I think that's the only path forward.
It really is. And that's why for me, I don't really call myself a conservative as much, because I don't want to conserve the status quo that has destroyed and literally leveled everything that we love about this country. It's like there is a need for something new, whether that's rediscovering what our forebears have discovered and understood and enforced, or whether that's coming up with new solutions. Like there has to be a new way forward. And I do think that's why a lot of people, it's really good people like Elon Musk are kind of hopping on the train to save civilization, because we need minds like that.
Yeah.
Well, it's just as simple as Elon thinks humans should continue to be in charge of the world. And so who'd have thought? And that truth actually exists. It's a crazy, crazy thing. Yeah. Guys, to bring this back to Dolly, Lauren, I'll give you the final word on this. Dolly did a wonderful job of treating people as if they matter. And it turns out that if you treat people as if they matter, people will love you ever more for doing so. And I'm kind of a pragmatist on this, Lauren. And so if that works, I kind of think maybe it's true that people really do matter.
Well, sure. I would never argue against that point. But I don't know where you want me to go with that. But
if you took the contrarian point right there, we're going to have discussions about the future.
I'm just going to push back on that, Pro.
Now you sound like me. No. I mean, we definitely need robots. In the future.
Well, we do need robots to do the laundry. Go ahead, Lauren.
I think the way to look at it is that there is a separation from your beliefs and your person. Your person always has dignity. Your beliefs don't necessarily deserve respect, but you as the person holding them does. So however you choose to vote, however you feel about whatever is going on, you're entitled to those beliefs. You're not entitled to use them as a bludgeon against others in society. That's the point that I would be making.
Well said, Lauren. We've reached the end yet again. But ladies and gentlemen, we've had fun today, have we not? And until the next time we get to do so yet again, be a friend to the channel. Click that like button. Share your thoughts in the dialogue down below. And if you're not yet subscribed, well, we need you right here on Team Pro. Until we meet again, keep learning, keep growing, and as always, keep having fun.